Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this special edition of the Ambassadorial Wing. And I am your host, the Ambassador, and it is so good to be with you all today because we are going to be concluding our talk on the major characters of Babylon 5. For those of you who have followed my channel for a while, this has been one topic that has been a focus of my channel by and large. And I thought to change things up a bit from just doing a normal recorded video for you all. I thought instead I would do a live stream video to discuss this topic that I have such a passion for, that being Babylon 5. And today we're going to, as I said, conclude our character discussions, and we'll be rounding out this topic with the characters of Marcus Cole, the Rangers, Lennier, Ambassador Delen's attaché, and Vir Cotto, Ambassador attaché to Ambassador Londo Mollari of the Centauri Republic. And to kick things off, I just want to say thank you for those of you who do tune in today. I hope you enjoy this stream. This is, like I said, a special edition. This may not be a all the time thing, just when I have the time. I do apologize for the delay for those of you who follow my posts on Twitter. I had a meeting this morning and everything, and unfortunately I ran a little bit longer than I intended, so that's why we're starting a little bit after 2 o'clock instead of right on time. And I thank you all for your patience. So anyway, first things first, let's go ahead and turn my camera on. So anyway, as I said, it's nice to see you all here today, and I do hope you enjoy this stream. I hope you do enjoy my discussion on these 3 characters from Babylon 5. Berserker 99, good day to you, sir. Glad you're here. Hope you enjoy the stream. So anyhow, as I mentioned, for those of you who have followed my, hold on one second, I will probably a little distortion with my camera. There we go. That's better. No, that's still not right. Okay, hold on one second, folks. Let's see if I can't fix this. Oh, that's much better. Okay, as I was saying, we're going to be discussing some of the great characters from the Babylon 5 universe, and to kick things off, we'll be talking about Vir Cotto, and attaché to Ambassador Londo Mollari of the Centauri Republic. And for those of you who don't know the background on the actor who played Vir, one Mr. Stephen First, he was in actually a relatively iconic movie of the 1980s, that being National Lampoon's Animal House. And Stephen First plays this very quirky, very odd little character in that movie by the name of Flounder. And I'm not going to go into a whole IMDb. If you want to look up Stephen First on IMDb, by all means do so, but I just want to give you all a really quick synopsis of who Stephen First was. And basically, that's one of his big claims to fame, aside from playing Vir Cotto on Babylon 5. The interesting thing about Vir, his storyline, his story arc, it doesn't go in the direction that you necessarily imagine that it would. Because the first time we meet Vir, he is actually coming on board the station, and Londo meets him at the embarkation point to the station. And he's very klutzy, very unsure of himself. He's very insecure, and he just doesn't have he doesn't have his feet underneath him. The things we find out about Vir throughout the run of the series is that this position with Londo was not necessarily a position that was very highly prized, because Londo's house, while it did have a pretty good reputation within the Centauri Republic and what have you, this posting by Londo on Babylon 5 was seen as more of a joke. And on that same token, the position of Londo's attaché was not one that people were actually seeking after, and it was just kind of tossed to Vir as like a bone or anything. They were tossing him a bone more or less to kind of get him out of the way. Like, go away, Vir. We don't really want you right now, and whatnot. So, but the other interesting thing about Vir is the fact that okay, all right, there we go. The other interesting thing about Vir is the fact that there's more to him than he appears, because throughout the course of the season or the series, he does evolve as a character. He does become more sure of himself. He does grow a backbone, and well, to be perfectly honest, and he honestly is one of those characters that really grows on you over time. And the wonderful thing about Vir is he is a very relatable character in a lot of ways. There's, for those of you that might be familiar with the phrase, do not judge a book by his cover, because at first appearances, Vir could appear very oafish, very clumsy, very klutzy, not altogether with it. But as time goes on, he gets out more in the world, in the manner of speaking, as he has more experiences there on Babylon 5, as he grows in his role as Londo's attaché. He does develop in a very interesting trajectory. And the neat thing about Vir is, as the series progresses, he very much becomes a moral compass or a moral center for Londo. Because for those of you who have watched my Londo video, and I will include links to all my previous, or at least the ones that pertain to the characters I'm discussing today, my Londo video. Londo gets into the very shady dealings. He isn't always operating on the up and up. And Vir is trying as best as he can to try and steer Londo away from what is honestly a very self-destructive path. And in the course of the series, Vir very bluntly tells Londo, you're going down a road that could eventually lead to you being destroyed, to you leading to the destruction of the Centauri people, the Centauri Republic in general. But Londo doesn't listen. And there are several very good episodes involving Vir that I absolutely love. And one in particular that I really enjoy is actually, I believe, in season 2. And this is an exchange between Vir and Mr. Morden. And for those of you who might be familiar with Mr. Morden, he was actually an agent of the Shadows, the first one's race. And he comes to Babylon 5 asking all of the ambassadors one simple question: what do you want? And eventually he comes across Londo, and Londo gives his long spiel about how he wants the Centauri to return to their place in the stars, how he wants to return to a place of prominence and what have you. And there's an episode later on in that season when Vir and Morden have an exchange there in the Zocalo, or one of the cafes there on the station. And Morden asks Vir, what do you want? Very sarcastically and condescendingly. And Vir comes back at him with, I think, is one of the best quotes from the entire show. What do I want? I want to live just long to see your head stuck on a pike, as a warning to the next 10 generations that some favors come with too high a price. I want to look up into your dead, lifeless eyes and wave like this. can you and your associates arrange that for me? And I'm saying the first time I watched that episode and I watched that scene, I'm like, Vir has grown a backbone, and it's a beautiful, beautiful moment because that is one of the first times. Good afternoon, Jeff. Good to see you, sir. Thank you for joining me today. And don't worry, it's all right. Anyhow, the other wonderful thing about the evolution of Vir throughout the series is that there are a few occasions where he has to step up into a role of leadership that he's not necessarily comfortable with, but he does it. In particular, in the aftermath of the Centauri attacking the Narn homeworld and the Narn people being enslaved by the Centauri, Vir creates a fake account of some sort, and he starts to smuggle Narn refugees and Narn slaves out of Narn space into safe space, in particular through Babylon 5. And he goes by, it's some sort of play on the name of Abraham Lincoln. And you see Vir, you see a further evolution of Vir as he is trying to work through this whole process of getting as many Narns out of Narn space and into free space as he possibly can. And the great thing about this is Vir has finally stepped into a role of leadership, of authority, and he handles it very well. Now, is it perfect? No. But he does his best to try and do some good for the Narn people, considering how bad of a place that they are at this time. And honestly, that's another thing about Vir that resonates very well with people, I think, because he isn't ready for leadership. He is not ready for leadership, but he is going to do everything in his power to step up and be a leader and help the Narn people because he feels that his people, the Centauri, are doing the Narn wrong. He feels that this war with the Narn should have never started. He feels it's nothing but a waste of time and a waste of lives on both sides. And he, in his own small way, is trying to effect a positive change for the Narn and for, hopefully, the Centauri Republic. Trying to show the galaxy that not everybody in the Centauri is a warmonger or some monster or what have you. And that is truly a beautiful thing to see. Because the other great thing about Vir is you never know what to expect, like in the exchange with him and Mr. Morden. When he reads Mr. Morden his titles for him, good, loud, and clear. But there's one other key moment in the evolution of Vir that I want to touch upon, and that's in an episode, I think in season 3, when the late Centauri Emperor's wife, or one of his wives, comes on board the station, and she's actually what they call a seer or a prophetess. She has the ability to actually see into the future. And she actually tells Vir and Londo that they eventually will ascend to the throne of the Centauri Republic, that they both will be emperor. But here's the thing. She tells them one will be emperor after the other. But she doesn't specify who will be first and who will be after. And there's this really great moment after the prophetess leaves. And just a side note, the prophetess is actually played by Majel Barrett. And for those of you who may not know who that is, she also played Lwaxana Troi on Star Trek The Next Generation. And she is the wife of Gene Roddenberry, which I thought was a really cute little moment and everything. The fact that they had a prominent character or a prominent figure from the Star Trek universe on Babylon 5, which wasn't the first time that happened, but that was one of the most notable ones. But what else do I want to say about Vir? As the series progresses, as I've mentioned, he grows into a much more prominent role of leadership, particularly when Londo is away. But we find out in some scenes and everything, that some kind of disjointed scenes. And as I've mentioned and everything previously in the video with Londo and G'Kar, G'Kar is the person who kills Londo. So Londo, in fact, becomes Emperor first and Vir after him. And we get this very distinct impression that Vir starts to turn things around for the Centauri. Because at this time, the Centauri people are under the grip, in particular Londo, of the Drakh, which were a race of aliens that were affiliated with the Shadows, and they had a beef. Yes, Jeff B. She was on all the good sci-fi. Jeff B's talking about Majel Barrett Roddenberry. And I will say this for her. She was a darn good actress. She was. And if memory serves, she was even, I think she was in some of the original TOS episodes, if not some of the TOS movies. She was like a background character. She might have played, I'm not sure who she played, but I'm pretty sure she might have been in the original series or some of the original series movies, one of the two. But eventually, Vir coordinates with Sheridan and the Interstellar Alliance to drive the Drakh off of Centauri Prime and out of Centauri space. And from what I infer, or what I understand, they are successful to that end. But unfortunately, they aren't able to defeat the Drakh completely. That comes later. But we get the impression that Vir's administration as Emperor of the Centauri Republic is a much better one than his predecessor, sadly. But the other cool thing is, while Vir may not be the most magnetic of characters at the start, his evolution throughout the series. Yes, Jeff. Yes, he did. Jeff says, Vir seemed to be a lanky marshmallow. They had one of the best character arcs. Yeah, he really did. I mean, he started out very oafish, very insecure, very unsure of himself, as I've already mentioned. But by the end of the series, Vir had grown up in a very big way. I think the thing we can take away from Vir's story arc is sometimes you are not ready for leadership. You will never, ever be ready for leadership. But sometimes you simply have to suck it up and run with it, even if you aren't ready for it. And I think that's one of the truly wonderful and magnificent things about Vir's arc. And for those of you that will watch this after on the replay, if you have any other favorable scenes or quotes or by Vir, comment down below and everything and let me know. Because obviously I can't encapsulize, granted, with a stream I have more time, but I want to try and give every character their own due time. But I will say the other point about Vir, he plays with all of the other characters so well. He plays off of G'Kar well. He plays off of Sheridan. Obviously, Lennier, him and Lennier have some memorable moments. I think I'll and I'll go into some of those later when I cover Lennier, or here in a few minutes. But he plays a good go-between character, but at the same time he has his own story, he has his own arc. And while he may at first, and I hope I'm not overemphasizing this point, while he was not ready for everything he was going to have to do, he said, well, somebody's got to do it, so it might as well be me. He put his head down and he charged straight ahead, and he got the job done. And I think that's one of the great takeaways. Perseverance in the face of what could be seemingly overwhelming adversity, I think is one of the great things we can take away from Vir's character. So, as I said, with any of these characters I'm going to be discussing today, if y'all have additional thoughts or comments, if you watch this on the replay, comment below and everything. If there's something you want to tweet at me, I will include my Twitter handle in the description and everything of this video. So, by all means, do so. But that being said, I think we'll move on to, I think one of my, I've said this about every character within the Babylon 5 universe. Many of these characters were very compelling to me, very interesting, very intriguing, and what have you. But one of my all-time favorites, truly all-time favorites, was Marcus Cole, the Ranger. And I did discuss him a little bit in my Susan Ivanova video, and I will be going back and everything to some of the material I covered in that video during this part. But Marcus, we don't meet Marcus, I don't think, until... I don't think we meet Marcus until season 3, actually. Or is it season 2? Yeah. I don't think we meet Marcus until maybe the tail end of season 2 or the beginning of season 3. And Marcus, what we learn about him is in bits and pieces, like just about every character. You have to just kind of piece together their backstory. And I think that's one of the neat things about all these characters, is you have to kind of piece together their backstory to figure out who they are, where they came from, what they're doing, and what they're about. But for me, Marcus, he was one of the most intense, one of the most interesting, one of the funniest characters, one of the most charming of all the characters in Babylon 5. And he had, I think, honestly, an incredible arc. While all these characters I've discussed previously had wonderful story arcs, Marcus Cole, I think he embodied the potential that humanity has in the future. Because while he was very, and I'll go into some of his backstory right here. What we know of Marcus Cole is that he grew up on a colony that was run by EarthGov. But unfortunately, it was one of those colonies that was run by a very crooked provisional government. And he hated EarthGov. He, in a manner of speaking, hated Earth Force. He grew up on a colony world. Him and his brother did. And he had no love whatsoever for Earth Force or EarthGov in general. And what ends up happening is his brother joins the Rangers. When they send out the call for recruits, Marcus's brother, I don't remember his brother's name off the top of my head. But his brother ends up going and signing up to join the Rangers. Marcus thinks it's a waste of time. Why bother? But sadly, Marcus's brother is killed. And Marcus decides, well, my brother believed in this. So, you know what? I'm going to step up and I'm going to take part and I'm going to be a ranger. And he becomes one of their very best. He becomes one of their very best rangers to ever serve in the organization. At least that's my opinion. And well, the first time we meet Marcus, he's actually on a world in Drazi space that's being blockaded by the Centauri. And he's trying to get word to Babylon 5 about how bad things are, because there's actually a Rangers training base, if I remember correctly, or Rangers camp on this Drazi world. And he's trying to get word to Babylon 5 that they are in a bad way, and that I think the shadows are going to move in and destroy the base. And what ends up happening is Marcus gets to the station. He gets to at this time. The land is in charge of the Rangers. She hasn't. I don't think she has. Yeah, she has at this point. She has transferred co-leadership of the Rangers to Sheridan. This is before they actually get involved romantically, as I understand it. But he gets to the land and says, "Hey," and tells Za, "We're in trouble. One of our bases is going to get destroyed by the shadows, and we need to get the Rangers out of there." And they eventually they get a strike force together. They go to the Drazi world and they take out enough of the defense platforms that are encircling the Drazi world that the Rangers can get out safely. But Marcus stays on as a liaison between the Rangers and the command staff on Babylon 5, and obviously Delenn, because she's the head at this time with Sheridan of the Rangers. And the neat thing about Marcus is he develops two very prominent relationships. One is with Stephen Franklin, and obviously the other one is with Susan Ivanova. Now, I'll cover the friendship. Let's term it that way. The friendship between him and Stephen is some of the episodes that involve them, particularly in the storyline, the war against President Clark. It's almost like a buddy road trip with the two of them, because their back and forth is so comedic, and I think that's one of the great things, because Marcus is, while he does have some serious moments, he is very quirky. He has a quirky sense of humor, kind of a British sense of humor, if you want to put it that way. He, at the same time, he commands authority. When he steps into a room, you know you're in the presence of somebody that can handle himself in a fight, and he does more often than not. He handles himself in a fight. This is a guy that's has been well trained by the Minbari as a ranger, but he still has this quirky, goofy side to him. And I think that's one of the great things about Marcus, is because he's not one note. And obviously none of the characters on Babylon 5 were ever one note, except for maybe Mr. Morden. But the other neat thing about Marcus is the fact that you never know what he's going to say. You never know what kind of response you're going to get from him in a particular situation. And I think one of my favorite moments is when Marcus and Ivanova go out on their own and everything to try and locate some more of the first ones for the war against the shadows. And I know I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between timelines here, and I'll get back to. I'm using this particular example, this particular illustration, to illustrate Marcus's wit. They go to Sigma. They take one of the white stars and they go to Sigma 957, where they know for a fact one of the first one races still inhabits that world. And you see this oversized glowing tiki mask that is supposed to be one of the first ones. And Ivanova makes some sort of comment about how the fact that they won't speak to them in their language, they won't speak to them in English. And I think Marcus makes the comment, maybe they're French. And he makes another comment when Ivanova's like, we are not leaving here without an answer, and that answer had better be yes, we'll be on board. But the wonderful thing is Ivanova's like, how are we going to get their attention? And or something like that. And Marcus says, well, I could dress up as the great Vorlon god Bushi. I just need a bucket and a mop or something like that. And you're thinking, that sounds like something Marcus would say. That so sounds like something Marcus would totally say. But getting back to the friendship between Marcus and Stephen. Marcus is a very introspective person, which means he's good at reading people's emotions or their intentions or what have you. And Marcus and Stephen are on Mars at this point. They're in contact with the Mars Resistance, and they're in contact with the leadership. And the leader of the Mars Resistance is this very beautiful, blonde, very tall, statuesque, blonde-haired woman known simply by the name of Number One, I think it is, or something like that. I guess this might be a little bit of a wink and nod to Star Trek Next Generation. But Marcus can see that this woman has a thing for Stephen, and he tells Stephen, when passion comes knocking, you don't tell him that you're in the shower washing your hair. You answer. And at the end of that episode, we see Marcus on guard duty, and off in the distance, you hear a very impassioned, "Oh, Stephen." So apparently Stephen and Number One of the Mars Resistance are, boo chicka wow wow. Sorry, I had to go there. Okay, I didn't have to go there, but I went there. There, fair enough. But the other relationship I want to talk about, and I've talked about it, well, most of you know where I'm going, is the relationship between Marcus and Susan Ivanova. And honestly, this is one of the most beautiful love stories. Jeff B., that's entirely possible. That is entirely possible. Well, I think the one thing that they wanted to do with Marcus, because obviously he was British, and we know that a lot of we can imagine the Tolkien's work might have survived into the future, and maybe Marcus read Lord of the Rings. We don't know. We have no corroboration whether or not Lord of the Rings was a real thing in the Babylon 5 universe, but we can assume it was. But I'm kind of getting off track here. Sorry, Jeff B. It's possible Peter Jackson and J. Michael Straczynski were good friends, and they did watch. They did share Babylon 5 back and forth, and anyhow. But the interesting thing about the relationship between Marcus and Susan is this was a love story. But unfortunately, up until a point, it was a one-sided love story. Because you can see throughout the episodes that Marcus and Susan are together. He loves her. And it's almost a love at first sight situation. And for those of you who might know what that's like, I think you can understand where I'm coming from. Because for all of us, regardless of where we are in life, we always had that first love, that first crush. But I think in the case of Marcus and Susan, it wasn't a crush. It was real. It was the real thing. It was love that Marcus felt for Susan. And as often as they were together, and of all the little comments that he made, and one of my favorite exchanges is I think Susan and Marcus are on Babylon 5, and they're talking about their first times. Well, we're all adults here. They're talking about whether or not Marcus is a virgin or not, and Marcus, in a roundabout way, does state, "Yes, I am a virgin," and Susan is absolutely taken aback by this because this is something she didn't expect, that somebody this far that's in her orbit and everything has held that back for that long. But Marcus has, because he wants to keep it for someone that he cares about very much. But unfortunately, it's a wish that doesn't get fulfilled. And I think the story between Marcus and Susan is one of the most beautiful moments in Babylon 5. Because you have that moment, you have that scene in the aftermath of Marcus hooking himself and Ivanova up to that alien machine and him transferring all of his life energy or whatever it is to Ivanova to save her life, because that is how intensely and how devotedly he loves her. And Marcus did. He loved Susan with all of his heart. And you don't see that type of love in any type of fiction, really. No, or at least not very often. And sometimes you don't even see that type of love that intensely in real life. And I think what Straczynski did for us in the way that he wrote that story between Marcus and Susan was give us an image of, well, as Susan called it, unrequited love, but pure and honest and decent and sincere love. Not something cheap, not something tawdry, not something superficial. Marcus saw Susan and saw her for the person that she was, and he still loved her. He still cared about her immensely, regardless of her imperfections, her flaws. He didn't care. This was a woman that he loved immensely, and he loved passionately. And he did so to his very last breath. And I think that is something that is so lacking in modern storytelling. And I think it's something we need to get back to. Because love is one of the most essential of human emotions. It is deep, it is pure, it is sincere, and it is honest. And love is one of those emotions that helps you survive in life. And I can say with all sincerity that I have that type of love for my wife. In many ways, she is my Susan. More than she may realize. I may not have the rugged good looks or the majestic long hair and beard of Marcus Cole. But much like him, I think we all can take a page from how intensely and how immensely he loved Susan Ivanova and incorporate it into our own lives. And while Marcus's time on Babylon 5 was not that long, unfortunately, his story arc was a great one. Because he died not just to a cause that he believed in, but he died for the woman that he loved. He gave his last full measure of devotion to this woman. Well, she said it best. I saw what I wanted. I knew he would never hurt me. I knew he would always be there for me. And I guess I was afraid. Claudia Christian in that moment portrayed true heartbreak and true regret in a way that you don't see much anymore. And you can feel that regret. You can feel that anguish and that heartache because she realizes how truly decent and honorable and sincere and loving and caring Marcus Cole was. Was he perfect? No, because we're all imperfect. We're all flawed. But did he love sincerely and honestly and completely? Yeah. Yeah, he did. That's one thing you can say about the character of Marcus Cole. He loved without reservation and without fear. He faced death with his eyes open, without reservation. So, again, if you all have other thoughts that I have not shared about Marcus, feel free to comment below and let me know, because I want to know what you all think of these characters, not just what I have to say. I'm just kind of opening up the dialogue here, so by all means, for those of you that watch this on replay, I know I'm kind of repeating myself, comment below, tell me what you all think. And if I missed something, if I missed a point, hey, this brain, while good, can only recall so much. But to round out this character discussion, we're going to cover the character of Lennier. Simply Lennier, of the third vein of Shodomo. And the interesting thing about Lennier, excuse me, I've already covered Vir. What am I saying? Anyhow, the great thing about Lennier is, while his character arc isn't that, I don't want to say it's dull, because it's by no means dull. While he kind of fades into the background in a manner of speaking, he has his moments throughout the series. But the one thing I want to talk about in terms of Lennier, and it's a very old-fashioned idea. It's a very old literary idea in particular, and you see it very prominently in the Le Morte d'Arthur, the chronicles of King Arthur and Lancelot and Guinevere and all of them. Sorry, hold on one second, folks. Yeah. Sorry, ears are itching. I could go into some of the great moments of Lennier and everything, but honestly, there's one thing in particular I want to talk about him. Because each of these characters within Babylon 5 embody a particular ideal or a particular idea or a particular philosophy on life. And what we have with Lennier, and this is, I'll give you all some context, because this is a very old-fashioned kind of idea, like I said, that dates back to the Middle Ages. And that's this concept of courtly love. and in essence, kind of an unrequited love. A love that is shared by one but not by the other, but is kind of shared by both parties. You see it very prominently in the Chronicles of King Arthur. And the fascinating thing about Lennier is when he first meets Delenn, the relationship between the two of them is on a professional level. Obviously, he is her attaché. He is her right-hand man. And he does all the stuff that she can't do herself. But as the series progresses, Lennier goes through some very heavy, very intense situations with Delenn. And at certain points throughout the series, you start to get this impression that Lennier's feelings for Delenn are evolving. They're changing. They're not remaining static. This isn't just an attaché working for an ambassador. This is something more. And what we find out periodically or at certain moments with certain characters, in particular Marcus Cole and what have you, and even with other Minbari, is that Lennier holds up Delenn as this paragon of the ideal Minbari, of a very noble and upstanding and very respectable and respected individual, but also someone that he has deep romantic feelings for. And at the point where Delenn and Sheridan have pledged themselves to one another, Lennier comes to realize that this is a love that cannot be fulfilled by both of them. But he's still in his duty to Delenn and everything that he does for her in a way, and everything that he does for Sheridan, he is fulfilling that love, for that affection, for that pining, I think is a good word, for Delenn. He is expressing this idea of courtly love and everything for his noble lady, for Delenn. And it is kind of a archaic idea. It is a very interesting one because it's not one that we see very often in, any type of media. But it resonates very strongly with, I think, with a lot of people. Because you could even draw a parallel that there is that similar idea of courtly love between Marcus and Susan. But the thing is, there's no barrier there except for the one that Susan puts up. She isn't involved with anyone else. But with Lennier and Delenn and Sheridan is that barrier, is that boundary that he can't cross over, because he is a person of honor. He is in a position of authority, and he doesn't want to disrespect himself or disrespect Delenn by trying to pursue her openly. He pines for her quietly and to himself. He doesn't want to risk damaging Sheridan and Delenn's relationship and eventually their marriage. And what you see at points, particularly in season 4 and 5, you see Lennier start to act out a little bit more than he has previously. And he starts to, I don't want to say come unhinged, because that's not necessarily accurate. But this love that he feels for Delenn is becoming so intense that he can no longer physically be around her. And I think it's actually in season 5, Lennier takes a Minbari flyer. It's a personal transport vessel. I think they use it as a long range fighter or whatever. And he runs. He leaves. And you could draw a parallel, in a manner of speaking, with the Arthurian legend, where Lancelot and Guinevere fall prey to their passions. And it breaks Arthur's heart. And what ends up happening is that Lancelot runs off and leaves. And you could draw a parallel. I think J. Michael Straczynski may have done this on purpose. And if he did it masterfully, in my opinion. Because you have a reflection of the Arthurian legend in science fiction. And you have it in the love triangle, in a matter of speaking, of Lennier, of Delenn, and John Sheridan. And it's so masterfully done. It really is, because this is not something we see very often, or even anymore in any type of media, in TV or in. Because yeah, you may have love triangles, but the thing is, all three parties are aware of it. But by and large, Delenn and Sheridan are kind of, well, for lack of a better term, ignorant of it. Although Delenn does pick up on it eventually, and she realizes that she needs to give Lennier something. And she kind of affirms his feelings, but she makes it clear that it can't go anywhere because she's pledged to John. I think eventually, well, obviously they do get married, but I think they're at the point in their relationship where they're dedicated to one another. And while she acknowledges Lennier's feelings for her and she respects him for not doing anything improper and imprudent, she makes it clear, and she does it very delicately, I think very, very masterfully, that it cannot go anywhere, and he understands that. But I think it becomes too much of a strain on him being around her so constantly that he can't handle it anymore. And the only way he sees that he can diffuse the situation is for him to simply leave. And he does. And I think that's one of the great things about Lennier, is the fact that he recognizes that there are limits to how far Delenn can express her feelings for him. And while she hates the fact that he leaves, she does understand. And she does, I think, if I recall correctly, she does make it known to John why Lennier has left. And John's like, I don't think John was as blind to it as I can recall. He might have realized it, but he simply didn't say anything because he realized that Lennier would not have acted on it. But he still feels regretful that it went this far and they never could figure out a way to resolve it, even though there really isn't a way to resolve it. It's one of those reconcilable. It's unreconcilable. It can't be fixed because John and Delenn are together. They love each other. They're dedicated to each other. And unfortunately, Lennier is the guy on the outside looking in. And he realizes that, and he leaves. But that, I think, is one of the great parts about Lennier's story arc, is the fact that he is this example of courtly love, of not unrequited, because I don't think that necessarily that idea plays in this particular situation. But at the same time, he realizes that he has fulfilled pretty much everything that he can fulfill in his role as Delen's attaché. She has John now and everything, and he feels like he can go off. And I don't know how they resolve Lennier's story arc or whatever. I don't know if he dies or whatever, but to the best of my knowledge, we don't see him again after this point. I don't think he appears in any of the TV movies or anything like that. And if I'm wrong, or if they did something with any of the Babylon 5 books, somebody let me know in the comments, what have you. So, but that all being said, folks, this in essence completes the character discussions for the Babylon 5 universe. Next part, and I'll be probably starting this in a week or so, we will be discussing the major organizations of the Babylon 5 universe, of EarthGov, of the Centauri Republic, the Narn regime, the Membari Federation. I will go into some background on the Rangers and everything, but we will be covering those 5 in particular. As far as the first ones go, I don't consider them an organization. Those are races. And I will cover those moving forward as is needed and everything as I think pertains to the discussion, because after I get done with my organizations of Babylon 5 series, we'll be moving into the series itself, and I'll also be doing discussion on the TV movies. And I will do my best to do this all in chronological order between TV movies and the TV show itself. So, as always, folks, thank you for watching. If you liked what you watched, smash that like button, give it a big thumbs up. Yeah, Jeff B. Bill Mummy could have had a bigger role. He was a great actor. I think for the part that he was given, he played it master. I think he played it very, very well. But anyway, getting back on track here. To everybody in the chat, thank you for being here. I hope you enjoyed this. I know I have enjoyed it. I know I've been wanting to pick back up on Babylon 5 because the show itself is such an intriguing piece of science fiction, of the science fiction genre. And it doesn't really get the love and attention that it deserves, I think, anyhow. And it has so many great characters, as I have hopefully illustrated relatively well between the videos and this live stream. And moving forward, I hope you all enjoy my thoughts and everything on this great series. So, as I started to say, smash that like button. Make sure you give it a share. If you come across this video and you liked what you heard, please consider subscribing. I am on Twitter, and I will include my Twitter link in the description down below. I can be reached at Rogue5778. I do accept DMs, so if you want to DM me, have at it. Everything, I will respond to you as soon as I possibly can. And until next time, my friends, this is the Ambassador, signing off.